Hi everyone, my name's Stuart Harris. I work in Plymouth in South Devon with deaf children.
And I'm Adam. I work in audiology in Plymouth with Stuart.
The reason we've made this video is I gave a talk at BAA conference this year about how we had moved our grommet pathway to direct listing for glue ear children. And ever since then, I've had a heck of a lot of inquiries from people, which is fantastic, and I'm really pleased that people listen to the concept and the idea. But I really want to sort of make this video so that you've got a resource and a forum and something to share with your trust, so that hopefully you can implement it without having to wait for an email from me, because at the moment I'm a little bit behind with my work, and just more emails from you lovely people is creating more work for me. So what we've done in Plymouth is, I'm not going to repeat the whole presentation, but I just wanted to give you a brief talk through about how we had gone about doing what we did with our grommet children. For us, the main issue was we looked at how long children, the first question was how long do children wait for intervention? So the first question was, we've got a child A with glue ear, and how long are they actually waiting until they receive an intervention, be that temporary hearing aids or grommets? And when we looked at that, we were meeting our targets, and all the Excel spreadsheets looked very good and very pretty. But actually, we realised that children were waiting a very, very long time for their first active intervention. In fact, some children were waiting upwards of 2 years for that intervention. And clearly, although we were 18 weeks and all these posh things, they were waiting too long for an intervention for a very, very common condition. So what we did was we met with the trust management, and I urge you all to do that, because when you meet with the access leads, they need to understand what RTT to use for this care pathway, because they're probably using RTT05, which is a watchful waiting care pathway, and us as audiologists understand that as being a pause. But that's interpreted by different people in different ways, and watchful waiting clinically is very different to watchful waiting managerially. You need to understand, and you need to ask yourself the question of how long are children from day one before they get that first intervention. And once you get that true reflection, then suddenly lots and lots of people start asking you questions about why children are waiting too long. And we knew clinically they were waiting too long, but those questions only happened because we updated our RTTs. So what we did was we looked at a range of different options, because when we updated the performance information, we ended up with children breaching, and that upset many people. And so suddenly they were looking for solutions to the problem. And for us, the traditional care pathway was probably the same as yourselves, which is we would do a period of watchful waiting within audiology, a 12-week, 3-month period of watchful waiting, and then we would refer to ENT for an opinion on management. And for us, that seemed a bit pointless. It didn't seem to add anything to the child or crucially to the family, and so we were introducing this step in the process that was unnecessary, because we as audiologists, either they met the criteria for intervention or they didn't, and either the family wanted to do something or they didn't. And probably a surgeon is not necessarily the best person in a busy outpatient clinic to have those conversations with that family. So we said that at the second appointment we would talk the family through the options and they would make a decision. So the crucial thing with that is making sure the family have the right information, and this is something that I didn't take with me to the BAA conference. We give this to all of the children, all the families who are diagnosed with glue ear, and that's the first appointment. Now this one, hopefully you've seen many times before, is freely available from our friends at the NDCS. This is one that we've written ourselves here in Plymouth, and what it does is, I won't go through the whole thing, but it talks about glue ear, but crucially it talks about the intervention options and things like auto-inflation as well. The idea of giving this to the child and the family at the first appointment is, if you are doing watchful waiting, in theory they come in armed with that knowledge, and hopefully they've got a decision in their own mind as to what will work best for them. There's also advantages and disadvantages of each intervention approach in here that us and ENT have put together. Those advantages and disadvantages, obviously we as audiologists are well versed in, but what we do find is the families, if they come in for that second appointment, need an intervention, they are better informed, and usually in the standard community clinic, the outpatient clinic, we haven't had to create any longer appointment times. The families are already aware of the options and they can move forwards with their ultimate decision. So that's a definite important thing, is to make sure that you give the family the information at the first appointment, because what you don't want is kind of an indecision and an and an ahhing at your second appointment, because all that's going to happen then is it's just going to prolong your follow-up appointment, and we don't want to extend the appointment times. The idea of this was to make things quicker and more streamlined for the children and their families. In terms of hearing aids, I'm not here to talk to you about hearing aids, but I just wanted to talk to you about how we manage the direct listing. So if you're a family at the follow-up and you have decided that you want to have your child to have grommets, then we as audiologists can make the decision to directly list that child for the grommet surgery. Now how that works is we fill out one of these two forms. And these are on AudioBase, so they preload. So basically we just print the document from AudioBase. I know you can do that with Practice Navigator as well. And we sign the form, and then that goes off to our theatres, to our day case theatres, and then they contact the family, and in part of the pre-operative assessment is an ENT, usually junior doctor, a registrar grade, and they are there to formally consent for the surgical procedure. So this is just a listing form, but what it does do is it removes the need for an outpatient appointment with ENT. As a consequence of that, the process is much quicker, because at the point when we are listing for the surgery, technically the clock starts again in terms of the 18 weeks, but at least it's not 18. It's making the decision at the second appointment. The child then has the grommets, and the final thing I should say is these two forms are different because our ENT surgeons gave us two forms. One is for grommets only, which is a 30-minute theatre slot, and the other one is a 60-minute theatre slot, and that assumes that they may need a tonsil or adenoid ectomy. Now we have a 5 pre-flight questions that we can ask when we are listing children for grommets, around breathing and around history of tonsillitis and things like that. And if any of those are answered yes, then we fill out the 60-minute request form. Obviously the surgeons would rather we had the longer form and then not need that extra time, rather than try and do it the other way around, which logistically can be problematic. So we make a decision as to which form we fill out. Obviously we're not assessing the child's tonsils, we're just asking pre-flight questions. But when they meet the ENT consult the doctor at the pre-op, they will look at the adenoids and tonsils, and obviously they're not going to remove anything without family consent or without checking that they need to come out. The child then has the grommet surgery and or adenoid ectomy, and then the day case theatres will write back to us in audiology, and then we do the follow-up. So we do the first follow-up 6 weeks after the surgery, and again that's in our community clinic. Hopefully everything's okay and everything's fine, but some children, as we all know, will have problems with infections in their ears and things like this. So what we have is we have a standard infected grommet letter, and this talks a GP through the medicines and how to manage that condition. And then we will also list that child for an outpatient appointment with the ENT. So at that point, if they have problems with infections and discharge, they will be given that letter to get an active prescription from their GP. They'll take a swab, and then within normally about 2 to 3 weeks, they'll see an ENT surgeon in the outpatient clinic for an ear health check. We think this process has worked quite well with our families, and the presentation that I gave goes on to say how the waiting list has really come down. And in fact, we are now, no child really is waiting more than 30 weeks. So that would be from referral to treatment, so that's 18, a magic 18, plus 12. And the 12 weeks is an appropriate watchful waiting time. But we believe by removing the outpatient in ENT activity, it's unnecessary and it doesn't really add a great deal to the process, and it's really made a big difference to their capacity in their outpatient clinic, but crucially it's made a big difference to how long the children are waiting for that care. And that's kind of what I want to say.
I think the only thing I will add, because I've just been sitting here looking at the camera, is that this only worked because the audiologist and ENT worked together on this and worked effectively together, but because we did, it's been a great success, and you need both sides and both teams to really be on board with it. But in other places that people have found that if someone's keen and wanting to push forward, then they can normally find a friendly person on the other side to help them move it on.
And understanding how long the child waits, absolutely pertinent. Don't look at your Excel spreadsheets, look at date of referral to date of treatment, and then try to analyse that process.
So my name's James Rainsbury. I'm an ENT surgeon at Derriford, and for me this direct listing pathway for children with glue ear has actually been revolutionary, because it has shortened the pathway for patients and parents, and it has taken out an unnecessary step in the pathway for many patients, and that has translated into freeing up a huge number of additional ENT clinic slots. So I think that it has many benefits, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now, I think. I haven't seen or heard of any detrimental effects of the pathway. I trust our audiologists. They are great at diagnosing and selecting the children. I think that probably having the discussion about the treatment options from audiology rather than from a surgeon also gives parents possibly a more slightly balanced view about hearing aids versus grommets. And so from my point of view, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you. And just to close on that point, the final thing to say was, for about 2 years after we introduced this pathway, we did a biannual review of the children, and we realised that there were some inappropriate listings that had to be unlisted, for want of a better word, when they were seen in the pre-op. Some of the children with comorbidities, cleft children, Down's children, things like that. And it was a learning journey for all of us. And Mr. Rainsbury and colleagues would feed back to us, and then we fed back, and then we had some discussion about whether they were right or wrong, if you like. But that was an important part of the process. And the last time we ran that audit, which was about 6 months ago, there was very, very few children who had been inappropriately listed. So it wasn't a sort of exercise that we did and then finished. It was an exercise that we learned from, and that we went back to drawing board, looked at the detail of when children hadn't quite gone in the way we liked. And I would urge you all to do that as well. On the video, I'm sure there's an email address, and please feel free to email that email address if you would like a copy of our care pathway, if you would like a copy of any of these documents. Really, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't want you rewriting all these documents, all these leaflets. Very, very happy to share them all with you. Just email that email address, and you're more likely to get a quicker response than you will from me. But thank you for your time, and I hope it was helpful.
There's just one other thing that I'd like to add, actually, which is that one of the things that has made the pathway work smoothly is that the patients are still seen at some point shortly before their surgery by an ENT consultant or registrar, and for a proportion of patients, they end up not needing the surgery, or another proportion of patients they might have something additional that hasn't been flagged up. But it's worked well as a safety net, if you like, and I guess sort of takes the pressure off the audiologists for listing children for surgery, because in the end I think we probably would all agree that that's something that should be done by the final decision should be made by one of the ENT team, but audiology have been brilliant at filtering out the patients who are best suited for grommets.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to add as well, to save Stuart's inbox further, all the leaflets are on our website. So, and I'm assured that the website address will also filter along the bottom here at some stage. And if you click onto that, you should just be able to find the main leaflets as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks.